11, and I was in foster since I was 8. And then she has her 2 little siblings, and I have had my 2 little siblings that I had to take care of. So, like, everything that happens in this movie with, like, her and the kids and how she takes over, like, that's just me. Like, I see me in this movie. And it was just, when I first saw it, like, I really enjoyed it. There were so many different things that I was like, oh, my God, they brought that up. Or, like, they kind of shone a little light on it. Is that what it says? Is that the saying?
Yeah,
but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they bring up a lot of different things that you see them on screen and you're like, oh my God, that's so sad. But when you live them, you're like bawling your eyes out. 85% of this movie, I was bawling my eyes out. But because of that connection that I have with it, you know, like that connection that I made. But I really enjoyed the different things that you're able to relate to being a foster kid, and then also how people can see like, oh my gosh, like I never thought of it that way. Or, you know, like I've mentioned before, sometimes, you know, kids get bullied like in school because of being foster, and you never really think of like, oh, what they go through or what they feel. And then there's different aspects that, you know, I'll be able to kind of do like a piece by piece, but there's another part where they kind of explain it to you, you know, kind of like with apples. And then you finally make that connection of like, oh my God, like I never thought of it that way. But yeah, I really, really like this movie for people, you know, who are interested in learning a little bit more about foster, or, you know, the different relationships and experiences that they go through, or as, you know, well as being foster parents, you know. It's a really good family movie that I really recommend to, you know, everyone out there, just to watch it and sit down and you'll see a little bit of a glimpse in like a foster kid's life.
Very nice. Well, coming off of that, is there anything that, since you're obviously educated in this field and have lived through a lot of things that are represented, do you think that this movie is guilty of kind of Hollywooding a lot of things up, or do you think that it feels very authentic in your opinion?
Oh, I feel that, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, jokes and funny things, because I feel like this is such a delicate and sad topic. Like, there's no way to really sugarcoat it, of, you know, foster kids and the information that they give out, and they just kind of want to make it like more like a family, like, you know, comedy. So they throw out those like, oh, like this, sad, and then they sprinkle it with comedy and funny and, you know, heartwarming things. So I don't want to say that they Hollywood it up, but of course they had to kind of add some aspects of like, we need to make this, you know, so the people aren't just like sad and being like, oh my God, this movie is like sad. So I think it's like a 50-50. Like, it's good information, but at times it's like, well, it's still a funny movie. It's still like, oh, just because these kids are happy in the end, and oh, it's a happy ending. Like, yeah, of course, that's a happy ending that is possible, but there's a lot of other kids that it's just not a happy ending, you know? And like I said, they do kind of throw it in there and give information. Like when Brenda, the guest speaker, is kind of talking about how a lot of kids age out, they end up homeless, they end up dead, they end up incarcerated, they end up addicts, you know, and all these different things. So they do kind of throw them out there, but this is more of a happy ending. So more of like happy. Oh, it's bad, but it's okay because it turns happy.
It's kind of rushing along for the sake of telling the entire story, whereas, you know, it didn't really have enough time to kind of flesh out everything that it could have. It's a good thing, because like I said, you don't want it to be just a sad story. Oh, yeah. Look at these poor kids. Oh, you know, poor them. And I think that's also one of the things that I like, because growing up, like, I didn't like the pity, and so I wouldn't really tell people like, oh, I'm a foster kid. Like, it took, I don't know, maybe like
a couple months before the friends that I would make at school, I would gain that trust to be like, oh, like I'm a foster kid. And most of the time it wasn't because I would be like, okay, we're going to have a meeting. So I'm a foster kid. It was more like, hey, you want to go to my house? Hey, you want to go do this? Hey, you want to go do that? And I would always say no, because I wasn't allowed. I couldn't ask for permission. In the household that I was living in, it's like you go to school, you come back from school, you go straight to the house, and you stay home, and the only time you go out is with them. And I couldn't really, and since I was 8, 9, like it wasn't like it's just kids wanting to hang out at their house, or like, hey, like let's go to the park. We lived across the park, like the school, so at times I was like, I can't go. And so a lot of times people were like, well, why? Like, your parents don't let you go outside? And I'm like, oh, no, it's just like I have to be home, like, for dinner and things like that. And they're like, it's 3 PM. And so eventually, like, I had to kind of tell people, like, oh, hey, this, and this. And so me trying not to have that pity, like, you don't really express yourself, like, when you're a foster. And I think here, like, so the movie wouldn't be, like, pity. They kind of did that whole... comedy, and like I said, there's jokes of the blind side in there, so that's also kind of like extra funny without being like, oh, like that's another foster kid kind of movie in a sense.
I guess I had a similar, I don't know if this is gonna ruin it for when I come on your show, but I had a similar issue where I was adopted by my grandparents, who were drastically older than my actual parents would have been, so that I didn't have all of the luxuries, or I wasn't able to go out with my friends or do much of anything. I had to go to school and come home, and that was pretty much it. So yeah, I can relate to you a lot in that aspect.
Yeah, no, it's just there's so many different things that can happen in foster, which obviously, they didn't really shine the light in. But for it being one of its actual, like, first foster films, like, I think it's pretty good. It's, educating. It's funny. It does, like I said, have that heartwarming ending. So, I like it. I'm like, I like it, and I'll focus on those little things. But... I wanted to I kind of wanted to bring up that, it is the movie, based on Sean adopting the 3 kids from foster. So it's kind of like based on the true story, but it's not all exactly like the real life. So I'm pretty sure they could have had, a rougher time with the kids, or maybe an easier time with the kids because they were younger, being 6 years old, 3 years old, at 18 months, the actual real kids from the story, that's a easier number to work with age-wise, because they're easier with their trust, right? Like, they're just little kids. And in the movie, they're 15, 10, and 6, I believe. I think the youngest is 10. And... oh, no, sorry, 6.
6, yeah.
Yeah. So even for the 6-year-old, like, she trusts more. I think she's actually the first one that throws it out like a daddy, the first one to say, like, mom or dad. So, because she's the youngest, and then you have the 10-year-old who's still kind of, iffy, but still wants, I think you're still a kid when you're 10, so you still want that, like, mom and father figure, and somebody, to say, I'm proud of you, or like I love you, or like even like a good night and things like that. And then there's 15-year-old Lizzie, who's like, no, I know how this goes, like I'm already older, like I don't need you, I have my own mom, and things like that. So I really like the different age that they chose instead of like little kids for the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I felt like they were the perfect ages to have your different kind of conflicts, you know what I mean? Where Lizzie is obviously like the teenager, and she's going through a lot of things, liking boys, and just doesn't, she's kind of just like, who are you? And like, I can take care of myself. I can take care of my little brother, my sister. Like you don't know us. You don't love us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then her little brother is very much like the kind of goofball where he's kind of accident prone, I guess would be a good way of to describe him. And then the littlest sister she seems to be fine at first, and then she just is big into the tantrums, and the only one that can really knows how to calm her down is Lizzie, and that's the kind of conflict that the two foster parents at first are dealing with, is trying to navigate and make everybody happy and find their purpose too, because I feel like as much as the movie is about the kids, it's about Pete and Ellie and their struggle to find their purpose.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's the biggest reason why I made that connection with the movie, because I was the oldest and then trying to take care of my brothers. But I think the only distinction was they were living in a separate home and I was in a separate home as well. So I had to be like the mom when we would have visits with our mom at times, because they wouldn't listen to my mom. So then I'd be like, hey, like listen or do this and that. And then my mom would be like, no, it's okay. Like I'll take care of this. And then it was still, and I think to this date, like I'm 28, my brother's 24 and the youngest one is 20. And I still act like the mom more than my mom. You know what I mean? So it really is growing up in foster and taking care of your siblings becomes a bigger bond than, I don't want to say than, living with your siblings, but living away from them. I think that makes the strength a little bit stronger, because you have to kind of be there by not being there, but trying your best, and as kids, we didn't even have like ways to talk to each other. Like there wasn't like, we didn't have cell phones to text, nowadays a lot of people can just text and call, but we didn't really have that. So, in the movie, being able to keep the kids together and the siblings together is a main priority. And I try to do that with my foster parent. Like they wanted to adopt me, but I was like, oh, can you adopt my brothers too? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, then never mind. I don't want to be adopted then. Thank you. So yeah, I think I really like the portrayal of the kids in the movie. And I was able to make that connection because when I was in first and foster, it was around those ages that we are a little bit younger, but I still considered me like an adult because I had to grow up and mature so fast taking care of my brothers. They were like my kids.
Amazing.
Another thing that I wanted to kind of bring up was like in the beginning where she goes online and discovers the Adopt Us Kids website.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's Adopt Us Kids or Adopt US Kids. So I was like, maybe it's Adopt like US Kids, like in the United States. I don't know. But it says Adopt Us US Kids. And they go, first she's checking it out and then she shows like Pete and he's like, no, I don't want to see that. Like it's too sad for me. And then you click on, or not click, but like he goes into the computer and it actually turns out that it's not sad. It's more of like, kind of like wishes, like there's a bunch of these kids and they have their pictures and they're all smiley. They're not like really sad. But when you think about it, it's like, it's kids who are trying to find their new family. So the little messages that they have, like it'll say their name, their age. And then I wrote down a couple that was like, I'd be okay with any parents that listen, or I want home to come back to on summer break and things like that. And I was like, oh my God, it is sad. Like I've never really like put my mind on these websites, and you're like, oh my God, it's like I don't know. I really like that aspect, but it also makes it kind of sad, like seeing all those kids, you know, on the website, just, you know, wishing that they had a family or wishing that they had a mom or a dad for this or for that. And I was like, oh, like it made me tear up a little bit. But I like that they did that, because that's the reality of it, you know, that there's so many kids out there who